All right, so welcome back in. Today we're going to dive into a game analysis. And one thing that we try to do here on the show is really dive in a little deeper with some of the creators of projects and also kind of look at roadmap development, because this has a lot of effect on how you guys either invest or maybe you're looking at going in and doing gameplay, different kind of strategies for a lot of you that are viewing in. And we'll dive in deep. My name is Paul Barron. Welcome back into TechPath. Joining me today is Derek Lau, who's the game director of Guild of Guardians. We've had this show and project on our roadmap for quite some time. Here on our show, we keep a track of a lot of these kinds of projects. So, Derek, great to have you on the show finally.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me here, Paul. Excited to
Yeah,
chat.
very much so. All right, so let's take a look at where you guys are today. What is happening within Guild of Guardians? Give me kind of the high level roadmap of what you've done recently and what maybe is on the forefront coming up.
Absolutely. So to kick it off, so Guild of Guardians is a play and earn mobile RPG, and our vision for Guild of Guardians is we want to build a really fun and compelling game, which can onboard millions or hundreds of millions of players into digital assets. Currently, we have a team of over 120 people working on it,
Okay.
and our high-level goal is we're really focused on releasing the game this year. So that's kind of our big focus. So far, what we've done is we've started building out the community. We have 400,000 to 500,000 people across our different channels. We've done a few NFT sales, as many projects do, but that's not where our focus is really anymore. We have a token that's live that's $500 million total right now, which is really powerful for us to use in the future as rewards and incentives for the community. And yeah, in general, our next big milestone right now is going to be sharing a glimpse of the game to our users via the closed pre-alpha demo. So that's quite
Yeah.
exciting as well.
Yeah, we were just showing some of the alpha play from last year there on screen. And I think when I look at roadmaps, especially around these projects, one of the things I'm always kind of, keen to understanding is first, is the team on the roadmap right now in terms of timing? Are they hitting milestones that you guys have set forth? Or are there any surprises that maybe you're seeing in current development that is and or could affect kind of the rollout of the project itself? How do you guys deal with that?
So we've been working on Guild of Guardians for over a year of development. Throughout this time, it's been very challenging in general. We're working with brand new technologies and doing things that no one in the world has done before.
Yeah.
With that being said, I think overall we've been hitting our timelines. What's happened is I think we've also realized some things are more complex, or we need to do more work on other things as well.
Right.
So it's always hard to estimate with this kind of thing. We also have, right now with the current situation, we also have a few developers in Ukraine as well. And so obviously with the global situation right now, they're all safe. They're all safe, but obviously it's a very stressful time for them. So that could have a small impact depending on how that goes as well.
Yeah, no, I completely understand with that. It's interesting. We've seen a lot of Ukraine, ironically, there's a lot of tech developers in Ukraine across all sectors, not just gaming, but we see this in DeFi, obviously in traditional layer ones and even in some of the layer two protocols. So it is something that I
Yeah.
think is affecting, the crypto markets a little bit heavier. And of course, we've seen some impact on the industry itself. Let's talk about game mechanics and, aspects around, forging NFTs within the game itself. Some of the strategies, because one thing that we look at here is not only the economy inside games, but also mechanics within it that help these games become very player friendly. It's instead of play to earn, it's play and earn kind of approach. Talk to me about some of the key elements that you guys are working on around game mechanics. What are some of the key points that players will really appreciate?
Sure. So at its core, the game is a action team RPG. So what that means is it's really focused around heroes. So players have, teams or rosters of heroes, and they form a squad to go into dungeons with. So you can bring 4 heroes into a dungeon, and the core loop of the game is you're using these heroes, thinking about what are the different synergies, what kind of items to equip them with, and how they might be good or bad against the different scenarios or dungeons and bosses that you're versing. And you kind of battle through these dungeons, get rewards, level up, and so on.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the core of the game. Another really important part of the game to us is around the guild and social aspect. So we strongly believe that games are more fun with friends, in
Right.
short, and that we want players working together with their guild, forming these friendships, playing every day, just chatting about things outside of the game as well, and working together as well in the game. So if we're talking about the NFT and blockchain aspect, so there's a few things within that. So first is the game's free to play. So someone can log in. They don't know anything about blockchain. They log in, they create an account, they start playing, and they have heroes. They can play. They can get items. They get materials, etc. They can contribute, right? And as they progress, that's when there's more and more of these NFTs or digital assets
Right.
that get introduced.
Mm-hmm.
And they get introduced. There's a few different layers to them. So certain heroes are going to be NFTs, and especially those that are rarity or higher. Equipment, a lot of items are going to be NFTs as well. And for us, one very important feature of the game is that we never sell items. So the only way that these NFT items ever get created is through players playing the game,
Yeah.
figuring out the right strategies, working together to be able to craft items. So we think that's really cool. It's a purely player-driven economy. There's a few other things as well, such as pets and guild tokens, but effectively the idea is we want players to play the game. We want there to be a level of strategy and skill, and definitely kind of social teamwork as well when it comes to succeeding in the game.
Yeah, I think that's one of the factors that at least a lot of the games we're watching right now is the free to play is I think will be the killer app that is the one that wins out in blockchain gaming, especially the way you guys are doing it, where you can kind of level up as you get better at the game. Now you get serious. I mean, it does kind of go from a casual player to a much more, fun, intensive player, which is when it gets really fun when you have players that can have not only groups of people, but it gets a little bit more competitive. So I think that's a good play on it. Let's talk a little bit about, because I think that does build obviously a pretty feverish community as well. When you look at partnerships, and a lot of partnerships starting to develop in the game sector, you guys of course have some project partners. Talk to me about who you're partnering with, where you see that going here in the near future.
Sure, yeah. So, at the beginning, earlier in our life cycle, we formed a few partnerships. We're quite selective with them. So
Mm-hmm.
really, we're keen to have, genuine value added partnerships with different people. So, we did something with Sandbox together, where we actually have some heroes that also appear in Sandbox that you can play in Sandbox. We are part of a Ubisoft program, and we work with them as well to share knowledge on how to crack the problem of blockchain games. Ubisoft have very vocally and publicly committed to this, so that they've been in the space for a long time, and they're great. They're great to work with. We did a partnership with NRG Esports, so one of the biggest esport teams in the world, to help almost like experiment together to figure out how can we bridge the world of NFT gaming with
Yeah.
their super, hyper digitally native audience, who
Mm-hmm.
are all kind of in that demographic mix of being digitally native and into digital assets, and forming a better connection between the IP and their fan base. So those are some of the things that we've done. These days, we're probably even more exclusive with the kind of partnerships we want to do. But there's a lot of opportunities out there that we're kind of eyeing. Some of them I can't talk about yet because they're not public, but we do have a few other things as well, which are pretty big scale.
Sounds like you guys have some stuff in the wings that could be a big deal for. I was looking at the GOG versus and Sandbox faction challenge. This was kind of interesting. Bot builder. I love this around the GOG HQ social club in the Sandbox metaverse. How will this work? Explain kind of to me how working with projects like a Sandbox really applies to building out a game-fi structure like what you guys are doing with Guild of Guardians.
Yeah, so that specific project was actually community driven. So a community member wanted to build something in Sandbox that was inspired by Guild of Guardians, and we supported
Yep.
them. I think we had a grant as well to support them, and we helped promote it, etc. And in general, like I think we believe in this kind of thing. We believe in empowering community members to build things. We believe in having Guild of Guardians in other worlds, right, or in other places. And I think ultimately what it does is it builds up a almost network effect where you have
Sure.
the brand, the characters kind of in more places, and you have just more people learning about Guild of Guardians. So there may be, let's say we build this massive game and world in Sandbox, for example.
Yeah.
That will bring new players to us. That'll bring new players to them. If we can interlink some of the gameplay and rewards, that'll make it even better. So I think ultimately these kinds of partnerships, these kinds of expansions, we believe just make the game overall more successful.
Yeah, yeah. And I think the fact that you have community members that are that passionate, especially when you can get them involved in some way, especially in a format where they're starting to develop inside these other ecosystems. Same thing with guilds, I guess, in a certain way. If you have, game players that are playing multiple different games, they're inside a guild, they're integrating in what they know about Guild of Guardians, trying all that. What do you see in terms of the future of guilds out there within the blockchain ecosystem? What are your thoughts on that? Where do you see that falling in the future?
Guilds are super fascinating, I think. So we work with a few of them. A lot of them reach out to us all the time, and I think they're a part of the ecosystem, right? Like, so
Right.
when you think about the core point of NFTs in a game, it empowers the economy. And so what you have in an economy is you have people doing different things. Everyone has their own role in the economy. In a real world economy, I'm building a game, someone else, owns a restaurant, someone else creates, other services. Everyone has their own role to play. And so these guilds have a role to play in these economies, right?
Yep.
And because of the nature of also how blockchain works, they're also empowered to build businesses, right? I think that's a key ethos of NFTs and blockchain. Like, we should be empowering people to build businesses, whether you're an individual or a guild or anything around a game. So, the current form we see guilds taking is mostly around the scholarship model, where bridging the gap between investors or manager type players who are time poor, possibly like more strategic, more cash rich, versus people who have more time and are interested in playing but might not have the capital to play a game.
Right.
So that's kind of what we're seeing right now, and I think that's probably going to stay. That's probably going to be more or less depending on the game, right? Like if the game is a high barrier to entry, there's a higher need for guilds. If there's lower barrier entry, there's actually maybe slightly less incentive for guilds. I'm sure there are some undiscovered models as well. Like, guilds may end up building, third-party tools that help anyone interact with the game, or we're seeing some pretty creative stuff now come out of guilds as well.
Yeah, we've seen, things like dashboards, real-time dashboards, game performance play, those kind of leaderboard type of scenarios, which I think guilds will be a big part of that. Additionally, I think the whole roster around education, which is a scenario that still needs to be done in the blockchain gaming space, because you're going to have so many new players that are not necessarily, we'll call it blockchain native, and they're coming on maybe from never playing games before, and they're venturing into the space. So I think that's going to be a big factor. I think will drive the future of that. I want to go into some of the mechanics of inside the project itself, some of the things that might be rolling out here coming soon. Talk to me about lending and sponsorship platforms that you might be planning. Can you talk any around that direction?
Sure. So we are currently we have a very long roadmap for Guild of Guardians, right? Like we have the version of Guild of Guardians that we want to release first, and then we have a lot of things that are going to get added in later, right? Like new
Mm-hmm.
modes, new ways to
Mm-hmm.
play, new content, new systems to interact with NFTs and tokens. To start with, we're not planning to build any native lending system. I know some games focus on that, where we don't think that's kind of like critical for our launch, and we're keen to start learning and launching quicker. Um, so this is an area where we're probably going to just let other people build things, and I
Yeah.
think we've seen that happen already, right?
Mm-hmm.
There doesn't need to be inbuilt lending systems for lending to happen.
Sure.
Um, and so this is one where we're probably going to lean on other people to build stuff, and really just have the empower other builders, right, to start with.
Yeah. I think that's a good move because we've seen that in other ecosystems where developers kind of help build out ecosystems to the point where one, sometimes they build a new product that just becomes kind of takes a life of its own. But especially with if you kind of congregate around a community that has a lot of passion behind a project, like in your particular case, very popular game. So I think that could definitely lean in on terms of creativity. And I think so much of this right now it's like we don't know what we don't know just yet because there's just so much really new blue water out there around blockchain
Mm.
gaming. So it's going to be fun to watch for sure. What about esports? Esports competitions playing into this. We've seen a few projects started kind of leaning into this a little bit. The virtual aspect of some esports, obviously, with blockchain versus what you might see in traditional studio gaming. What are your thoughts on that? Is there a future there for blockchain gaming and esports?
So going back to what you said, I think yes, and I think but it's similar to in terms of the opportunity and solution space is super broad, right?
Yeah.
Um, no one has done it to a large scale yet. There has a
Hmm.
lot of potential models or things that you could do with esports or even with influencers and content creators just hasn't been done yet.
Yeah.
And I think that's super interesting for us. We're definitely keen to
Very early.
explore and experiment in the space, right? Um, our collaboration with NRG Esports is one of those examples, where
Hmm.
we were both quite happy with the results. And so I think that's something that we're going to push further into the direction of for sure. Um, the and I think there are different ways to take it as well. I imagine for us, it's going to be less of an individual, 1v1 esport scenario. It's probably going to be more guild focused. It's probably going to be
Yeah.
more about, you know,
Right.
guilds versus guilds. Maybe you have individual leaderboards as well and other things.
Hmm.
I can see how other games might have completely different models, you know, battle royale type sports or other
Yeah,
things
for
as well.
sure.
So I think it's also going to depend a bit on why players play the game, what kind of esport type mechanisms they would like to actually engage with.
Yeah, and I think this is going to be one of those categories for blockchain that is going to be really critical around play to earn gaming, play and earn gaming, is because esports really kind of put, to a certain extent, all the major studios on the map. Some of these studios got on the map because of esports, and I think as we see that may be playing out, probably in a different format, most likely. I mean, it may not be the Coliseum type approaches that you see in the traditional esports, but I think there will be some very interesting, intriguing models just because the amount of brain power that's going into this right now is going to be pretty interesting to watch. Could be some
Yeah,
whole new elements of how what could be blockchain esports really kind of developing in the future, especially around
yeah,
social,
and so
because
yeah,
I think you guys are hitting on social aspects around the game itself. Expand on that a bit for me.
yeah, and I think just going back to one more point on the esports thing as well is if you look at the other side, so the perspective of the esport teams,
Right.
right? Like all of them are thinking about NFTs, and I think that's super exciting because you don't. It's not just about if you look at the biggest esport teams in the world, a lot of them have announced crypto partnerships A lot of them are thinking about NFTs, and I think that's also super powerful. And it's not just us in the crypto space wanting to do things.
Exactly.
You have big professional teams who are looking at it, and I think that's where a lot of the potential is, and that's where we're interested in.
Yeah, I like it.
Sorry, go ahead with your
Social
repeating your
aspects.
question.
Yeah, like social hub,
Aspects.
social aspects of, because I feel like more games that
Yeah.
really invite the social aspects in. It kind of blends the perfect worlds that we've kind of created in our 2D environment, social media, and obviously what we could see in Web3 developing from a gaming aspect. What do you see in terms of a future there?
Yeah, so I think social is actually really important in NFT games. So there's a few reasons for that. I think one of the main reasons is these digital collectibles are typically things that people like to show off. The
Right.
reason
Yeah.
even if you look at the physical world, a lot of
For
the time
sure.
someone buys a Rolex because they want to show it off. Like they
Yeah.
don't. If no one ever sees it, would they still want it? And the same concept applies for digital items. So you have a
Yeah.
super rare hero. If no one ever
Mhm.
sees you using it, if no one ever sees all the cool things that you do with it, like, is that worth as much? Do people care?
Yeah.
Right? And I think so. If you apply that concept to games, I think this is where the ability to actually interact with others, the ability to show others, what you actually have and play together, the ability to even just show off your collection
Yeah.
to other people. I think these social aspects are really important, and that's definitely something that we're focusing on as well.
Yeah.
The other thing is just purely from a gameplay perspective. So
Mhm.
if you look at players' willingness to play a game, log in every day, players' willingness to spend, when you have people working together, when you have other team members almost relying on you to play, or they're celebrating when you do well, right? I think these are things that are very positive, just from a human psychological perspective. They help build that relationship. They make you feel good, and these are things. One of the key reasons why people play games as well. And so being able to have the social aspect of that, where the game is social for a player, and hopefully they're playing with their friends and they're meeting new people as well. That's what I think makes someone play a game for years, and that's what we want to do.
No, I think that's a good point because I think we will see kind of that really interesting evolution around social because I don't think that we've seen real social in traditional studio play right now. I mean, it is there to a certain extent, but I don't. Obviously, with online gaming, we do see it. But in general, from a play to earn aspect, it brings a new level of urgency to the field of play. So going to be interesting. Hey, listen, I have a rundown of a lot of questions I want to get to you before we end
Okay.
up here. So I'm going to kind of like rapid fire you on a couple of things. Additional game modes, guild raids, guild PvPs, LAN gameplay, any of that. Anything you can talk about there in terms of short-term plans?
In general, we're quite focused on guild-focused expansions. So things like, working on guild raids, working on other guild modes. LAN is something we've discussed, or the idea of LAN, the idea of user-generated dungeons, this kind of thing. I think that's
Okay.
going to be further down the roadmap because it's just going to take a little bit more time to refine, develop, experiment with, etc. But our plan is to continue to add to the game.
Yeah. Why do you think players should, I mean, because we are going to see a large adoption. Do you feel like guilds are going to be the destination for players? Or do you think there could be kind of these, to a certain extent, like enthusiast players in traditional games? Or do you think guilds are going to be kind of the track for this?
I think I mean there's going to be ways for players to play even if they're not in a guild.
Mm-hmm.
Our preference is to actually have players playing in a guild, though. We think that's
Yeah.
going to be the best way, the most engaging, the most fun way to play. It's not going to be the only way, right? There's going to be many other ways to engage in Guild Guardians as well.
Talk to me, explain the GOG token versus gems. How does that work?
So they're the same thing, different labeling. So,
Hmm.
in particular with the App Store, we're not going to call anything a token.
Yeah.
So really, or even to a normal gamer, token is just a very strange word, right? So,
Hmm.
uh, we're just calling them gems, which is much more familiar,
Yeah.
but they're the same thing.
Yeah. Interesting. All right. So we're talking about demo right now. What do you think is going to be the official release date? You said this year, early in the interview here. Is that still on cue?
So our plan is kind of what we've said publicly is first half of this year we want to release a pre-alpha demo.
Okay.
Second half of this year we want to release a like public alpha and testnet. That means
Okay.
everything's working,
Yeah.
but it's on testnet. Then depending on how that goes, right? How robust it is, how scalable it is, what we learn from it, we'll probably make a few changes and then move on to mainnet, which will be first half of next year.
Yeah.
Our
I like
preference
that.
with roadmaps is generally like we don't like to overpromise. We would rather be conservative, right? And
Yeah.
I think that's probably different to a lot of other projects because as a project, you're incentivized to overpromise so
Yeah.
that you sell more things,
It's the
which is
hype
what.
machines that are out there for
Yeah,
sure.
exactly.
Lots of them. Yeah,
Um,
for sure. Hey,
we
Derek.
don't really believe as much in that. Yeah.
Yeah, that's good though. I like that. I like people who are grounded, but they're trying to, stay on roadmap and also at the same time are building something broad. But usually it's decisions that you make in the early road mapping stage that puts you in this position. So kudos to you and your team for doing that because that's usually it's, well laid plans kind of approach is the way I see it. Last question for you, and that is when you look at the ecosystem of blockchain gaming right now, what do you think is going to be the critical or the most influential opportunity in the near future, say the next 18 months, to see large mass adoption? What do you think will be the driving force for that, for gaming, blockchain gaming?
Yeah, the driving force will be a powerful case study that shows a normal gamer why blockchain games make sense, right?
Okay.
And why it's not just about the money, why it's not scammy. Um, I think that the biggest barrier right now is the perception, regardless of whether or not that's true.
Yeah. Yeah.
A lot of players have the perception of just NFTs are bad. It's bad for the
Hmm.
environment, it's bad for XYZ. So having a really powerful case study, go, hey, look at this amazing game. By the way, did you know there's blockchain in it? Or like here are your friends who are playing it as well. I think
Mm-hmm.
that's going to be super powerful for just really moving the dial. 100xing the industry.
Yeah, I think you hit it. I think that's one of the things we've talked about here is that potential realization of what really is happening here will eventually be revealed, and I do think you're dead on that there will be some good case studies out there that kind of point in the direction. Hey, it's been great having you on, Derek. Awesome stuff. We're going to continue to watch the project for sure and keep it tight. So as things start to roll out, we'd love to see more gameplay. Maybe actually, we probably should put it in our game studio because we're getting ready to launch one and have a lot more gameplay footage and stuff like that. So we'll definitely try that soon. But thanks for stopping in. We appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Excellent.
Can I make one last comment?
Yes,
Which
please
is
do.
if anyone's interested in the project, I'd encourage you to just go to our website and pre-register for the game. And that's how you can keep up to date.
Yeah, get pre-registered for the game for sure on Guild of Guardians. All right, guys, you're listening in over on the podcast. Thanks, Derek. You're listening in over on the podcast. Thanks again for all the kudos over there. Did you know you can leave some stars when you're listening on the audio version over on Spotify? Do that if you would. But guess what? The best place to come is over here to the YouTube channel. This is where you're going to find all of our analysis, our breakdowns and CEO interviews, all of our deep dives on gaming projects like what we just did with Guild of Guardians and Derek. This is where it's at. All you have to do, come over, search Paul Barron Network. You'll find us. Subscribe and like a few videos to kind of get yourself immersed in all this stuff. And hopefully it's going to point you in the right direction for the blockchain understanding of what's happening and shifting the dynamic element around all of society, both finance, fun, entertainment, all that. I think it's all blending into one place. Listen, you want to reach me? It's out on Twitter at Paul Barron. We'll catch you next time right here.